You stood at that gate for 5 hours, you watched the departure board change 3 times, and when you finally got home and sent the airline a message, you got back a polite paragraph about unforeseen operational circumstances, an apology for the inconvenience, and if you were lucky, a £50 voucher against a future booking. So you shrugged and got on with your life. That is exactly what they were counting on, because in a great many of those cases, that airline did not owe you an apology. It owed you £520 in cash, per person, by law. Here is the number that should stop you. Under UK law, a delayed or cancelled flight can entitle every single passenger on the booking to £220, £350 or £520 depending on distance, and it is per passenger, not per booking. A family of 4 on a long-haul flight is owed £2,080 for one bad afternoon, and in England and Wales you can go back 6 years to claim it. 6 years. That means flights you had forgotten about, holidays from 2020, that miserable Tuesday in 2023. All of it still live, all of it still claimable, and every day you do nothing, another week of it quietly expires. In Scotland the window is 5 years, which makes the clock tighter still. Nobody sends you a reminder that it is running. And here is the part that should make you furious. The airlines know these numbers precisely. They have entire departments built around them. They send the voucher instead because a £50 credit note costs them almost nothing and makes the problem go away. Nobody warned you about this. Not the check-in desk. Not the cabin crew. Not the app that told you your flight was delayed without ever mentioning the word compensation. Quickly, because it matters. I'm not a solicitor and nothing here is legal advice. These are educational examples based on the published regulation and the current rules as they stand, and every claim turns on its own facts. Check the Civil Aviation Authority's own guidance, or take proper advice before you rely on any of it. My name is Jack, and this channel is for one group of people, the ones who did everything right, who booked early, turned up on time, packed within the limits, paid for the seats and the bags and the priority boarding, and then got treated like an inconvenience the moment something went wrong. You were sold a contract. What you got was a shrug. I'm here to hand you the version the airline does not print on the voucher. Subscribe, because next week I'm taking apart travel insurance. The 4 exclusions buried in nearly every UK policy that mean the claim you are counting on will be refused and the one word on your certificate that decides it. If you have a holiday booked, you will want that one. Before we start, one number in the comments. How many flights have you taken in the last 6 years? None? A few? Or more than 10? Just the answer. I read every comment, and by the end of this you will understand exactly why 6 years is the number that matters. Now let me make this real. Meet Ian and Rachel. Ian is 48, Rachel is 46, and they took their 2 children from Manchester to Orlando 2 summers ago. The big one, the trip they had saved 3 years for. Their outbound flight sat on the tarmac, and then in the terminal, and they finally landed 5 hours and 40 minutes late, having spent 9 hours in an airport with 2 exhausted children and a bill for sandwiches they paid themselves. The airline emailed an apology and offered them £75 each in vouchers. They took it, because it felt like something, and because by then they were home and tired and it seemed churlish to push. They are not complainers. Ian works in logistics and has spent his whole career being reasonable with people about delays, and something in him found it embarrassing to make a fuss over a holiday they had, after all, eventually had. It was not a fuss, it was not a favour. Let me show you what they were actually owed. Number 1, the 3-hour delay, measured where you land, not where you take off. Here is how it works, and the detail catches almost everyone. The clock that matters is not your departure time. It is your arrival at your final destination, and it is measured from the moment the aircraft door opens, a principle established in the Sturgeon case and applied ever since. If you arrive at your final destination 3 or more hours late, and the cause was within the airline's control, compensation is due. The amounts are fixed by the regulation and have nothing whatsoever to do with what you paid for the ticket. Under 1,500 kilometres, that is £220. Between 1,500 and 3,500 kilometres, £350. Over 3,500 kilometres, which is most long haul, it is £520. with one wrinkle worth knowing. For those long-haul flights, a delay of between 3 and 4 hours can be reduced to £260, and only at 4 hours and beyond does the full £520 apply. Manchester to Orlando is roughly 6,900 kilometres. Ian and Rachel landed 5 hours and 40 minutes late. That is 4 passengers at £520 each. £2,080. Say that back to yourself. £2,080 replaced by £300 of vouchers they could only spend with the airline that had just ruined their first day. And notice what the ticket price has to do with it. Nothing. Ian booked those seats 11 months out on a deal and paid about £480 each. The compensation is £520 each. He was owed more than he paid. That is not a loophole or a quirk. It is the deliberate design of the regulation, because the payment is not a refund of your fare. It is a fixed penalty for wasting your time, and Parliament set it high enough to actually hurt. Number 2. The cancellation inside 14 days. Here is how it works. If your flight is cancelled and the airline told you less than 14 days before departure, you're owed compensation on the same distance scale, unless they offered you a rerouting that got you there within a tight window of your original times. And this is the bit people give away for free, that compensation is entirely separate from your refund. You're entitled to either a full refund or a replacement flight to your destination, and on top of that, the compensation. Airlines routinely process the refund, mark the case closed, and never mention the second half. If you accepted a refund for a cancelled flight in the last 6 years and never received a penny beyond your ticket price, there is a very real chance you're still owed. And watch how the notice period works, because it is a hard edge, not a gentle slope. 14 days before departure and you get nothing. 13 days and the full amount is potentially due. One day either side of that line decides whether a family of 4 walks away with 0 or with £2,080. The airline knows precisely which side of the line it cancelled on. You almost certainly do not unless you go back and check the date on the email, which is exactly why you should. Did you know the airline has to feed you and put you in a hotel, even when it owes you no compensation at all? Type yes or no. Most people have no idea those are 2 completely separate legal duties, and it is about to save somebody watching this a few £100s. Number 3. Denied boarding when the flight was oversold. Here is how it works. Airlines deliberately sell more seats than the aircraft has, because they know some people will not turn up. Usually the maths works. When it does not, somebody gets bumped. If you are denied boarding against your will, having checked in on time with a valid booking, you're owed the full compensation immediately, the same £220, £350 or £520, plus a refund or a reroute. And here is the trap. They will ask for volunteers first and offer a voucher to anyone who steps forward. If you volunteer, you have agreed a deal and given up the fixed legal entitlement. If you are involuntarily removed, you have not. That distinction, made in 30 seconds at a gate by a tired family who just want to get home, is worth over £500 a head. And there is a close relative of this rule that almost nobody claims. If the airline moves you into a lower cabin than the one you booked, you paid for business and you are sitting in economy, that is an involuntary downgrade, and you are owed back 30, 50 or 75% of the price of that flight depending on the distance, payable within 7 days. Not a voucher, not lounge access, not a bundle of air miles offered at the desk, a percentage of what you actually paid in money. Number 4. The missed connection you were told was your own problem. Here is how it works. If your journey was booked as a single reservation, the law looks at your final destination, not the individual leg that went wrong. So if a 90-minute delay out of Edinburgh causes you to miss a connection and you reach your actual destination 4 hours late, you are owed compensation based on the full distance of the whole journey, not the short hop that caused it. Airlines lean hard on this confusion because the first flight was only a bit late. That is not the test. The test is when you arrived where you were going. Picture it in practice. A regional hop delayed 80 minutes is not a compensable delay on its own. Nowhere near 3 hours. But it makes you miss a long-haul connection. The next available seat is the following morning, and you land at your final destination 16 hours behind schedule. The airline's first email will talk about the 80 minutes. The law looks at the 16 hours and the full distance flown, which puts you squarely in the £520 band. Same disruption, 2 completely different framings, and only one of them is correct. We are 4 in, and look at what one ordinary family was sitting on without knowing it. £2,080 from a single delayed holiday flight. and a cancelled trip to Alicante 8 days before departure, 2 years earlier, where they took the refund and thought that was that. 4 passengers, medium haul, another £1,400 they never claimed. That is £3,480 from 2 flights, from a family who assumed the vouchers were the system working. And they are not unusual, they are not frequent flyers, they are not business travellers, they do not fly for work. 2 holidays and a long weekend in 6 years, and they are owed more than most people have in savings. Whatever number you put in the comments a few minutes ago, go back through it now. Number 5, the excuse that is not an excuse. Here is how it works, and this is the one that makes me angry on your behalf. Airlines can escape compensation if the cause was an extraordinary circumstance, something genuinely outside their control. Real ones exist: severe weather, air traffic control strikes, security alerts, bird strikes, a medical emergency on board. But the phrase gets stretched relentlessly, and the courts have been steadily pushing back. Routine technical faults are generally not extraordinary, because maintaining aircraft is what an airline does. And then there is Lipton against Be a City Flyer. Mr. and Mrs. Lipton had a flight cancelled because their pilot fell ill at short notice. Their claim was £250 each. The airline fought them through the county court, then a second county court, then the Court of Appeal, and finally to the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom. In 2024, 6.5 years after the flight, the Supreme Court ruled unanimously against the airline. Staff illness is inherent in running an airline and is not an extraordinary circumstance. Read that back. An airline spent 6.5 years and an enormous legal bill fighting a couple over £500. Ask yourself what that tells you about how much they would rather pay lawyers than pay you, and understand why they did it. It was never about the Lipton's £500. It was about every other passenger on every other cancelled flight where a crew member phoned in sick. Because if staff illness had been ruled extraordinary, an enormous category of claims would have vanished overnight. They lost. Which means that today, if an airline tells you your flight was cancelled because a pilot was unwell, and therefore no compensation is payable, that answer is simply wrong, and the highest court in the country has said so. Now let me show you the part that changes everything, and there are 2 halves to it. The first is the clock. In England and Wales, the limitation period for this kind of claim is 6 years. In Scotland, it is 5. Which means this is not just about your next flight. It is about every qualifying flight you have taken since 2020, sitting there, unclaimed, quietly aging out 1 month at a time. The second half is the one almost nobody knows. The airline's duty of care is completely separate from compensation, and it survives extraordinary circumstances. So even when the delay is caused by weather and you are owed no compensation whatsoever, the airline must still provide meals and refreshments appropriate to the wait, a hotel room and transport to it if you are stranded overnight, and a means of communication. There is no fixed cap on that duty. If they fail to provide it and you pay for it yourself, you keep the receipts and you claim it back, separately and on top of anything else. Think about what that means on a bad weather day. The board says cancelled, the airline says extraordinary circumstances, and technically it is right about the compensation. But it still owes you dinner, it still owes you a bed, and it still owes you the taxi to reach it. Every person who has ever slept on a terminal floor because staff told them the weather was nobody's fault was being told a half-truth. The compensation was nobody's fault. The hotel was absolutely their responsibility. Ian and Rachel bought 9 hours of airport food for 4 people and never thought to ask. Now, to be fair, because the honest version is the useful one, extraordinary circumstances are real, and if your flight was genuinely grounded by a storm or a nationwide air traffic failure, no compensation is due, and no amount of firmly worded letters will change that. The burden of proving it sits with the airline, not you, but if they prove it, that is the end of the compensation claim. Not the end of the compensation, that is. Never the end of the duty of care. Compensation also is not automatic on a delay of 2 hours and 50 minutes. The thresholds are hard lines. And if you booked separate tickets rather than one reservation, the missed connection rule generally will not help you. Finally, coverage follows the route. Flights departing a UK airport are covered whoever you fly with, and flights arriving into the UK are covered when it is a UK or EU carrier. That is the honest shape of it. But within those lines, the entitlement is not a favour, a gesture or a goodwill payment. It is the law. So let me add it up for one family. The Orlando delay, £2,080. The cancelled Alicante flight they took a refund for, £1,400. The airport food they paid for themselves across 2 disruptions, comfortably over £150 with receipts. And the £300 of vouchers they accepted, which was never a settlement of anything, because a voucher is a discount on giving that airline more money. Total, somewhere north of £3,600 from 2 flights in 6 years, for a family who never once considered themselves the sort of people who make a claim. Every figure in that list is fixed by regulation and verifiable against the published distance bands. You can check every line of it yourself in about 15 minutes, which is precisely what I would encourage you to do rather than take my word for it. Now multiply that by every household in Britain that has ever taken a voucher and said thank you. Here is the uncomfortable truth underneath all of it. The system is not broken, it is working exactly as designed. The regulation is genuinely strong, some of the strongest passenger protection anywhere in the world, but a right that nobody exercises cost an airline precisely nothing. So the incentive is not to break the law. The incentive is to make the law tiring. The vague email, the voucher offered first, the form that loops back to itself, the 28-day silence. They are not betting you have no case. They are betting you will get bored, and an entire industry of claims firms now exists to take between 25% and 40% of your money for sending the letter you could have sent yourself in 10 minutes. Think about how strange that is. A whole sector employing thousands of people, profitable enough to advertise on daytime television, built on nothing but the gap between what the law gives you and what you know about it. That gap is the product. Every pound those firms earn is a pound that exists purely because the information was hard to find. Nobody at that airline has a job that depends on you being paid what you are owed. That job is yours, and it takes about 10 minutes. So here is what to do this week, and it is free. 1. List every flight you have taken since 2020 that was delayed by 3 hours or more, cancelled inside 2 weeks, or oversold. Check your email archive for booking confirmations. It is all still there. 2. Work out the distance to your final destination and which band you fall into. 3. Write to the airline citing the regulation and the article by number, with your booking reference, flight number, date, and the exact arrival delay measured at your destination. Specific claims get paid, vague complaints get vouchers. 4. Give them 28 days. 5. If they refuse or ignore you, escalate free to their alternative dispute resolution scheme, which for most major carriers is CEDR or Aviation ADR, and if the airline belongs to no scheme, take it to the Civil Aviation Authority. 6. As a last resort, the small claims track exists, and these claims are routinely won there, and never ever pay a company a percentage of a claim you can make yourself. I've put a free template letter and the full distance table in the description so you can work through your own flights in order rather than guessing. And if you have already accepted a voucher, do not assume that closes it. A voucher accepted without a clear written waiver of your statutory rights is frequently not the end of the matter, so it is still worth asking the question. And one last thing that does not sit on a spreadsheet. Ian and Rachel's children were 7 and 10 that summer. They lost the first day of the holiday they had saved 3 years for, sat on an airport floor eating overpriced sandwiches their parents paid for, while a company that owed them £2,000 sent an email apologising for the inconvenience. The money is recoverable, even now, years later. That day is not, and never will be. The reason to claim is not really the cash. It is that the only thing that makes any of this stop is enough people finally asking. So, which of the 5 surprised you most? Drop the number below. 1 for the 3-hour arrival rule, 2 for the cancellation refund gap, 3 for denied boarding, 4 for missed connections, 5 for the extraordinary circumstances excuse. Whichever gets the most comments becomes next week's deep dive. Hit like, subscribe if you have not, and then send this to one person you know who has flown in the last 6 years and accepted a voucher without ever questioning it. There is a good chance they are owed money right now. They simply were never told to ask, and that 6-year clock is still quietly running.